Trees are supposed to save the planet. We plant them to absorb carbon, we protect them to produce oxygen. And 360 million years ago, the first trees did exactly that. They absorbed carbon, they produced oxygen, and they did it so aggressively that they froze the oceans, collapsed marine ecosystems across the planet, and nearly ended complex life before it had properly started. The most dangerous organism in the history of Earth is currently outside your window, and nobody taught you this in school. Part 1. The world before trees. To understand what the first trees actually did, you need to understand the world they walked into. And yes, walked into is the right framing, because the Devonian period, around 400 million years ago, was when life first started figuring out how to exist on land at all. Before that, land was basically nothing. Rocks, thin microbial mats, a few early mosses and liverworts clinging to wet surfaces near water. The atmosphere had more carbon dioxide in it than anything alive today experiences. The planet was warm. The oceans were full of life. Fish were diversifying rapidly. The first vertebrates with proper limbs were experimenting with crawling out of the water and immediately regretting it. And the atmosphere was the key variable. High CO2 meant a strong greenhouse effect. The planet stayed warm. The polar ice caps were minimal. Ocean temperatures were elevated. The whole system was in a kind of hothouse equilibrium that had been running for a very long time. Then the trees showed up, and they had absolutely no idea what they were about to do. Part 2. What made trees different? The first proper trees appeared around 360 million years ago. Not the soft green things we think of as plants. Something new. Something that invented a structural solution so chemically novel that it changed the planet in ways that are still being felt today. They invented wood. Wood sounds simple. It is not simple. Wood is primarily composed of cellulose and lignin. Cellulose is the structural carbohydrate that most plants use. Lignin is something different. It is a complex organic polymer that cross-links with cellulose to create a material of extraordinary rigidity and durability. Lignin is what makes wood hard. It is what allows a tree to grow tall instead of flopping over. It is what allows the structural engineering of a 40-meter trunk carrying tons of canopy weight. And here is the critical fact. Lignin is chemically complex enough that decomposing it requires highly specialized enzymes. Enzymes that, in the Devonian and early Carboniferous periods, no organism on Earth had yet evolved. The first trees could grow. They could absorb carbon from the atmosphere and lock it into their wood. They could die, and then they just sat there. Because nothing alive could eat them. Picture a forest of enormous trees dying and falling and piling up and not rotting. Not for decades, for millions of years. Wood piling on wood. Carbon that had been in the atmosphere being pulled down and locked into undecomposable structural material and accumulating in layers that eventually compressed under geological pressure into the densest carbon deposit the planet has ever produced. Coal. Every coal seam on Earth is a graveyard of those first trees. Hundreds of millions of years of unrotted wood. And we have been burning it for 300 years, but that comes later. First, the trees had to nearly kill everything. Part 3. The oxygen spike. Here is where it gets genuinely alarming. Trees absorb carbon dioxide and release oxygen. This is the thing we celebrate about them. The reason we plant them. The reason protecting forests is framed as protecting the atmosphere. In the Devonian and Carboniferous periods, the trees were doing this at a scale and speed that the atmosphere had never experienced. Not one tree. Not one forest. Trees spreading across every landmass available to them. Absorbing CO2 at a rate that began pulling the greenhouse gas out of the atmosphere faster than volcanic activity and other natural processes could replace it. Atmospheric CO2 levels dropped dramatically. Over millions of years, but dramatically in geological terms. And as CO2 dropped, two things happened simultaneously. The greenhouse effect weakened, the planet started cooling, and atmospheric oxygen rose to levels significantly above what we breathe today. Current atmospheric oxygen is about 21%. During the Carboniferous period, it reached an estimated 35%, possibly higher. This had consequences that extended well beyond the climate. At 35% atmospheric oxygen, fire behaves differently, more intensely, more readily. Insects, which regulate their size partly through oxygen availability because they breathe through their body surface rather than through lungs, grew to sizes that seemed completely wrong. Dragonflies with wingspans of 2.5 feet, millipedes over 2 meters long, scorpions the size of dogs. The high oxygen atmosphere was essentially a size amplifier for every arthropod alive, producing a world that looked like a biology teacher's nightmare. But the cooling was the bigger problem. Part 4. The freeze. As atmospheric CO2 dropped and the planet cooled, something started happening at the poles that had not happened in a very long time. Ice. Permanent ice. Not seasonal. Permanent sheets building at the poles and spreading toward lower latitudes as the cooling continued. The late Devonian and Carboniferous glaciation events are among the most severe in Earth's history. Ice sheets covered significant portions of the southern hemisphere. Sea levels dropped as water locked up in ice. The shallow tropical seas that had been the engine of marine biodiversity for hundreds of millions of years contracted, cooled, became inhospitable to the species that had been thriving in them. Marine species went extinct in waves. Not one event, multiple pulses of extinction spread across millions of years as the cooling progressed and ocean chemistry changed in response to it. The Devonian mass extinction, triggered and sustained largely by this CO2 drawdown, killed somewhere between 70 and 80% of all marine species. 70 to 80%. This is larger than the extinction that killed the dinosaurs. The asteroid that ended the Cretaceous killed about 75% of all species globally. The trees did comparable damage to marine life before the first reptile had evolved. And they did it by doing the thing we celebrate them for, absorbing carbon, producing oxygen, being trees. Part 5. The Carboniferous World and its Problems. Eventually, the glaciation stabilized, not because the crisis resolved cleanly, because the system found a new and deeply unstable equilibrium. The Carboniferous period, which followed the Devonian, is named for a reason. It was the age of coal formation. The great forests of tree ferns and early conifers and giant club mosses covered the tropical regions of the planet in dense, wet, continuous canopy. The unrotted wood was accumulating at depth. The atmosphere was high in oxygen. Giant arthropods were running around being enormous and unsettling. And early reptiles and amphibians were navigating this world of dense, continuous forest. Then the climate started oscillating, not warming, not cooling, swinging. The Carboniferous rainforest collapse, around 307 million years ago, was a geological event so fast it registered as abrupt even by geological standards. The continuous tropical forest fragmented. The wet, humid climate that had sustained it dried and cooled in pulses. The great rainforest that had covered the tropical landmasses broke into isolated pockets separated by drier terrain the forest could not cross. For the animals trapped inside those isolated forest pockets, this was an evolutionary forcing event of extraordinary intensity. Populations that had been one continuous gene pool were suddenly separated into fragments with no contact between them. Each fragment evolved independently under whatever local conditions the fragment produced. The Carboniferous rainforest collapse is directly linked to a massive diversification event in early reptile evolution. The animals locked in those forest islands started becoming different things very quickly because the isolation forced it. The trees built a world, then they broke it, and the breaking produced the evolutionary pressures that eventually led to every reptile, every dinosaur, every mammal, and every human that followed. Part 6. The Coal Twist. Here is the part that makes this story genuinely uncomfortable. The unrotted wood from the Carboniferous forests eventually became coal, compressed, buried, locked away under hundreds of millions of years of geological accumulation. The carbon those trees pulled from the atmosphere 360 million years ago sat in the ground, inert, for the entire history of complex animal life on Earth. Through the dinosaurs, through the mass extinctions, through the ice ages, through the entire rise of mammals and primates and humans, just sitting there. And then, around 300 years ago, humans started burning it. Every ton of coal burned is ancient carboniferous wood being decomposed at industrial speed. The carbon the trees spent millions of years pulling from the atmosphere, carbon that crashed marine ecosystems and triggered glaciation events and restructured every land animal lineage alive at the time, is being released back into the atmosphere at a rate that makes the original tree-driven drawdown look gradual by comparison. The trees created a climate crisis by removing carbon too fast. We are recreating it by putting that carbon back too fast. The symmetry is almost too neat to be real. Around 300 million years ago, the fungi finally caught up. White rot fungi evolved the enzymes needed to decompose lignin. Wood started rotting, the carbon cycle stabilized. The great coal-forming era ended because the trees no longer had a monopoly on not being decomposed. The crisis resolved because evolution produced an answer to the problem. The question worth sitting with is whether evolution is fast enough to produce an answer to the problem the second time around. The fungi took millions of years. We are not operating on that timeline. The first trees were not villains. They were just extraordinarily good at being trees. They absorbed carbon because that is what photosynthesis does. They produced oxygen because that is what photosynthesis produces. They grew tall using lignin because lignin is an elegant structural solution. None of it was directed. None of it was malicious. They were just doing what trees do, but doing it in a world that had no systems in place yet to handle what trees do at scale. The marine extinctions they triggered were real. The glaciation they caused was real. The carboniferous rainforest collapse they eventually produced was real. And the coal seams their unrotted bodies became are as real as the power stations currently burning them. The most important thing the first trees teach us is that a process can be completely natural, completely unremarkable at the level of the individual organism, and still produce planetary consequences that dwarf anything a predator or a disease or an asteroid would cause. Not through malice, through scale, through doing one simple thing so completely and so persistently that the systems around it cannot adapt fast enough to stay balanced. The trees outside your window are doing the same thing their ancestors did 360 million years ago. Absorbing carbon, producing oxygen, being trees. The difference is that the world has spent 360 million years building the systems to handle it. Fungi that decompose wood, animals that eat plants, soils that absorb carbon, oceans that buffer atmospheric chemistry. A complete interlocking system built on the foundation those first disastrous trees accidentally created. We inherited a planet built by a near catastrophe, and the thing that nearly destroyed it is also the reason it works. If the story of one organism accidentally reshaping the entire planet is what keeps you watching, our last video goes even further forward in time. Watch Colossal just announced the next animal. Direwolf was practice. Next, a company that has spent 4 years building a pipeline to undo extinction just added their 6th species. The dire wolf was the proof. What comes next is the part nobody is fully tracking.